Estamos nosotros escuchando.
If you'll take just a minute to listen to the voices, please.
Dwarahusapega. Are we listening? Dwarahusapega.
Apa kita ngomongake?
Oja ma gusmidehin.
Lyssnar vi?
Milesia.
Počúvame.
Her near.
Aki sa wandinovade.
私たちは聞いていますか?
There are 7.9 billion people on our planet, and there's 6,910 spoken languages. The recording that you listen to are actually 76 of the different languages, and their mother tongue speakers saying in their native language, "Are we listening?" Thank you for taking a minute to listen to them. I appreciate that a lot. Phew, this is so exciting. And my name is Rebecca Carlton, by the way. I'm the artist who created the piece, Are We Listening? And it's... Gosh, thank you. It's an installation piece that has to do with cultural identity and celebration and acknowledgement of our world community. When I found out that there were so many spoken languages, I was compelled to do a piece that would honor all of our community. I chose not to do 6,910 pieces or parts, but there's 692 in this work, which is 10% of the world's language communities. I'm not going to talk about the configurations or my intention about the piece more because I really want to listen to the musicians and the panel this evening. This is going to take me a few minutes because it's really important for me to honor the people who are sitting before you. In our geographically tiny part of the world, how have so many forces converged to create and sustain such a curious, creative community here in Door County? With great fortune, during the next 2 months, we will meet many of the seed planters and established roots of Door County's artistic community. I hope you will join in listening to their stories. This evening, we begin a series of panel conversations called Listening to Door County Artists. On specific Tuesday evenings during the months of May and June, you are invited to listen to 50 of Door County's local artists. These very enlightening conversations provide an opportunity for artists to talk about their practice with other artists and for our community to listen. Each event will focus on artists in a specific medium. Tonight it's musicians. In the future we'll have visual artists, actors, writers, filmmakers, and women visual artists. Our first panel conversation celebrates the richness of Door County musicians. I am honored to welcome you. Thank you for your time and contributions to the conversation this evening. Our community is excited to hear from each of you, and you can tell there's so many folks who came out in this pouring rain to hear all of you. Let's see, I'm sorry. I would like to introduce the members of our panel conversation. Each has such a rich and varied background, and I apologize for only a brief description of each of you. I also want to mention that Mike Judy is not here this evening. He was one of the panel members. He is quite ill with a cold and didn't want to share it with everyone else. So that's why he is not here this evening. Zephyr Ciesar is a songwriter and lead singer for Bacchus Lotus. Zephyr was kind enough to share song lyrics from her not yet released EP, Little Green. What I'm going to do is, I looked at the musicians who are lyricists and writers, and I personally selected just a few short stanzas from some of their writing, just to give you kind of a taste of who they are if you don't know them. This is from the song Good Enough. On time, every line, words so practiced, they rhyme almost perfectly. Tell us not to compare, then line us up by the color of our hair. Room full of girls who look just like me, thinking, are we good enough? Allyson Fleck is a violist, music educator, and executive director and assistant artistic director for Midsummer's Music. Allyson is quiet about her accomplishments. However, one I would like to share is her performance with the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra of all the songs that nature sings at the Kennedy Center Concert Hall in Washington, D.C. Mike Fordney will be our moderator for this evening. Mike is a Door County community advocate and musician. Mike's advocacy work has focused on issues of food insecurity and homelessness. One can find him performing with Cathy Grier and the Troublemakers. Cathy Grier, I want to say something. Cathy has helped me in countless ways. So Cathy Grier is a songwriter, composer, guitarist, founder, lead singer for the Troublemakers. Cathy moved, to Door County after performing at the Steel Bridge Song Fest, organized by musicians Melanie Jane and Pat McDonald. From Cathy's CD, I'm All Burn, Roots Run Deep. That's the song, I'm sorry. I've been thinking how we learned about love. Found an old photo, a picture of family. A family vine wraps around me. Tradition won't let me be me. I'm never gonna live that down. Jess Holland, who also has been a rock for me in many ways, is a folk musician, vocalist, banjo and guitar player, and a community advocate. From Jess Holland and Nick Hoover of Deaf Folk's album, All the Walls Are White, this is a song, You Are the One. Put down your sword, put down your gun, put down everything that distracts us from being one. There's a war inside us, carries between us two. Put away your weapons so we may find the truth. Pat McDonald is now writing, rediscovering the sixth string and reanimating his pre-T3 acoustic roots with fingerstyle remakes. His new songs flirt with a twisted spirituality, hints of hope and optimism, embraced and defaced by his trademark darkish humor. Pat also is the instigator for the Open Mic Writers' Night weekly event at the Tamarine Lounge in Sturgeon Bay. From the album Strange Love, PM Does DM. Enjoy the silence, words like violence. Break the silence, come crashing in, into my little world, painful to me, pierce right through me.
That's Martin Gore, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a quote.
Okay.
Very well chosen.
It's listed as one of your songs that I really like.
I sang it for
Okay.
sure. I like that's probably better than most of the quotes you could have taken from my songs. Good job.
I thought it was some of that darkness.
Yeah, there's an affinity.
Kaira Rouer is a boundary-breaking freelance flautist, music educator, and the new executive director of MUSE Sturgeon Bay, Inc. She has performed with the Crypt from Fish Creek. Kaira's focus is on classical works, interwoven with her passion for music education. Colin Welford considers himself primarily a performer and arranger. However, he is also a conductor, organist, pianist, and leader of the Colin and Friends Concert. He is a writer of musical theater where Northern Sky has produced his play, Strings Attached. From Strings Attached musical, Tongue-Tied. Time stood still, then sudden fireworks. While boom, 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 my heart replied, all was plain and fine. then pandemonium. He kissed me till I couldn't speak. It feels so good, I'm gonna freak. Where did he learn such great technique? I'm totally tongue-tied. Welcome to all of you, and Mike, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Isn't this an incredible display of artwork here? I think we need another round of applause. It kind of reminds me of music. This is kind of an infinity kind of thing. This seems a little bit more form to it. And I'm not sure these birds are chasing each other, but they seem to be having a lot of fun. But one of the things that really impressed me, it's interesting that you mentioned that we're musicians and then went on to talk about all the things that we do that are beyond music. But I paint pottery at Clay Bay Pottery, and I was asking Rebecca how many of these birds did she have to make to get the 692, and I was very impressed. 800 birds. That's a pretty good show. But well, thank you, everyone. This is really an honor, and it's been fun. This is the third one that I've attended. I wanted to do some homework by coming to the other presentations, and I think Rebecca did a great job of introducing the panelists. I think you'll find, though, that there are more than just musicians here. I did some little homework as well, checking out the panelists on their Facebook sites and their and LinkedIn, and I think my favorite one, Colin, is you referring to yourself as a music supervisor.
Yes, that was my job, my actual formal title.
Okay.
I didn't call myself that.
that was pretty amazing. So the plan here is to have a conversation. There are four major topics that I'm going to try to address and have the panel speak to tonight. The first one is really on the overall health of the Door County performance community, and certainly all the changes that have happened in the last 5 or 6 years, or even longer, post-COVID and everything else along with that. The second topic is really talking about the economics of being a performer in today's environment, and what's that like, and how is that changing. And then the third topic is talking about, is there anything here in Door County that we really need to boost and do more of? You know, Kaira's job as the new executive director at MUSE. There's got to be some cool stuff that's going to happen there. So we'll learn about what hole that is filling. And then the last thing is what I am talking about, songwriting, which is the other commonality here in addition to musician, other though I am not much of a songwriter, but is to talk about the personal experiences in songwriting and really just musician growth. And I'm hoping that we'll hear a lot of fun stories as part of that. So we'll hopefully leave enough room at the end of the panel discussion for you all to ask some additional questions. So as I said, let's start about talking about the Door County performance world. You know, we've had some very strong regional venues in Door County for many, many years. Birch Creek, the Music Festival, the Auditorium, TAP, which is, about 20 years old now, Bjork Lunden, Door Shakespeare, the Players, Peninsula Players, Northern Sky, Fish Stock. But since COVID and even time before that, this area has exploded with a lot of growth in not just venues, but just performances. Steel Bridge is a great example of that, and a lot of people here pretty much came from that experience to Door County. MUSE, hopefully we'll learn more about that tonight. Gala, I went to a meeting at Gala. That is a very large venue. We'll see what that brings to us. And then the whole municipality thing. You know, these municipalities have really gotten involved in the music world in the last few months. We have a recording studio with Studio 330. Here's Hans Christian sitting right in front here. And then we also have sound companies like Piranha and others. So it's a pretty vibrant community. But that's from the outside world, from my perspective. I would love to hear from the panel about how you're feeling about Door County and the venues and things. Oh, we need another mic?
We have one there and one there. So they all have switches, and that way, because Chris is recording, so it'll be really good if you can, whoever talks, make sure that you speak into the mic.
Test. Got it? I'm going to ask to start with Cathy Grier. She's sitting next to me. She's kind of my boss. Trouble!
Your trouble. What do you want to ask me?
I want to ask you about your thoughts about the growth in the business, the venue community in Door County and your experiences here from that. What do you think of the vibrancy of the marketplace?
I think there's a lot. Certainly, the concept of a bar with music, a club with music. We seem to be having a lot of breweries and wineries that are coming together, and I think that there's a certain age of people that like to go to breweries and wineries because they remember what it was like to be at a club, whereas just going to a bar and listening to cover songs. I think there is a vibrant original potential here. I know that it's harder for me to get the work initially, but when I get in and people can see how I perform, then they're not really as concerned. That's probably something that's carried with me all my life. Putting together a set list of original material, but also wanting to get the work. So people like what they know. Door County is very vast in the amount of places where people can perform. I personally would perform more, but I do want to have a value on what I how the price of my performances, and I think that's the hardest part because there's a vibrancy in so many people wanting to just do it for free, or I had my day job where I made, people make enough money that they don't have to. I've been a professional musician all my life, so I guess that's probably the biggest issue.
We've had a lot of bands coming to Door County. I was looking at the Stone Harbor list for this summer. Most of the bands I've never heard of. Are there more bands coming to Door County as part of the growth? A quick response from you, and then I'm going to move to Kaira.
I think yes. I think there are definitely a lot of bands that are coming into the area because they have the catalog, and it is perceived as coming from outside in, and then not being the local artists. Sometimes local artists are seen as, well, they're local, so we've seen them, and we want to see something new.
Great. Thank you very much. Kaira, we're all excited to hear about MUSE and how it fits into the community in Door County.
Yeah, and actually I can piggyback on a lot of what Cathy is talking about here as far, and your comment about, outside artists coming in, and how do we balance that with local artists as well. And I'm hoping what we're trying to do at MUSE will appeal to a lot of people. So we're trying to balance both. So we want to bring in people from outside of the county so that we can introduce new things to people and enrich our community that way. But we also want to support our local artists. So we're finding opportunities where we're curating concerts, actually, and we're creating something new in our concert experience from what you might see at other venues, where artists come together and bring their own unique skills and perspectives of music, and maybe outside of music. We're putting together some shows right now that have a multimedia element to them as well. And what we're doing with that is creating an atmosphere of collaboration in a way that will create concerts that you hopefully, well, not hopefully, like we want to see them duplicated everywhere else, but hopefully never seen before, this new thing. And we're actually finding that a lot of artists from Milwaukee and Madison are really excited about this idea and collaborating with Door County musicians directly. And as we fundraise and our budget comes into fruition and stuff, we'll be able to reach out and secure a lot of these local artists. But we're also bringing in many outside artists, and right now that is kind of one of our focuses, just to see what can MUSE, what's MUSE's threshold for that, and then create a basis there, and then fill in with our local artists all around it. So we'll have this concert series, but we'll also create and hold space for the local musicians. And it's not just concerts for us to ticket and promote, but it's also an opportunity for new musicians to come in and rent the space, and then take care of their own ticketing and their own promotion, and give them some really valuable experience I like to think of it as like an economic launch pad where they can come in and they can practice putting together a whole show and then develop their audience in an affordable, acoustically sound space. And but I definitely am very sensitive to that balance of outside and local talent and how those fit together, as well as how they interact together. And I think that's an element that's often missed in this county, that a lot of times it's completely separate. Either this band comes in from out of town and they do their gig, and then another day we have a local artist, whereas we are hoping like we can pair local artists with these larger outside acts and give them a little more visibility that way too.
Do you have a timetable?
It's kind of a loose timetable right now because our fundraising is just starting. But we have a couple of introductory events coming up. We will have an event in mid-June, June 13th. Ask Carol will be coming in. We're planning right now kind of a sneak peek block party kind of thing. We're going to have them out on our patio and open our doors so the public can come in and see the space and envision what it will look like once we have all of our equipment set up and all of our furniture in place. And I'm talking with a couple of food trucks and things like that. So we'll have kind of an outdoor party, but invite the community in and get a little sneak peek. Then in July, hey, Allyson, remind me, is that Griffin or Midsummer's playing in July? I know we've got you guys, one of the groups is playing in July, another one is playing in September. And then we're hoping to open for full operations sometime in August or September, depending on how fundraising goes. So that's my super long answer to the timetable.
Good news. Thank you. Pat McDonald, I found something on your site that was pretty interesting. You actually played in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 as an actor or as a musician?
I wish as an actor.
Actually, I was with a band in Austin. We were Timbuk 3, and we were in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. We had 2 songs. In fact, if you watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, a song of ours is playing loudly at the beginning of the film during the chase scene where we're trying to get away from the killers. And I was pretty shocked by it because it was like, okay, here's the movie. Okay, here we are. And it was loud in the mix, that was amazing. But the reason I think that happened is because if you know Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, the first one, the legendary one, the one that people have actually seen, then you know that there's the ending, there's this truck driver, there's this girl, she's running down the highway, and this truck driver stops and pulls her in and rescues her from the evil. And he is a actor named Ed Gwynn, who a lot like Ed Gein, which is interesting, but his name is Ed Gwynn. He was the first black musician in the University of Texas band, and he had to fight to get in it. It was an issue at the time. So he got in, and he went on to form some bands in Austin, became a popular musician in Austin eventually, and then he became an actor. Well, at one point, he was still a musician. He discovered the band I was in a place called the Hole in the Wall, and he actually was playing an instrument called the synclavier, and which was a fancy synthesizer, a sampling synthesizer, and he liked the fact that we were kind of playing a combination of techno and folk music, sort of, and so he asked us to come and record at his studio. He owned a studio, so we came and recorded some demos, some of which ended up on our first album, and then he actually became our manager. So so that was our manager. He actually got us in the door to play this event that was on MTV that kind of got us discovered. And but he also, his greatest accomplishment was to get us in the soundtrack of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Yeah.
Great story.
Which he was also in. He played another role in that movie. He was in the first one and the second one. There was a barbecue cook-off in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, you can imagine. Yeah.
So this creativity that you have, obviously evidenced by Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but also helped create, or did create, Steel Bridge, which is a fundamental event that occurred in Door County in the last decade. And can you talk a little bit about what brought that on?
That definitely required that we get somebody like Jackson Browne involved, which kind of jump-started things. I remember back then, Sturgeon Bay was, before we had Carrie booking all these amazing people up at the DCA, nobody would believe that an artist of that stature would come to Door County to play. And so it was kind of like that disbelief that started firing it. And then finally, when he did show up, gave us a great jump start, and it was a great concert, and all this excitement around the bridge suddenly, and we decided we would have to keep it going in order to really have any kind of profound effect from it. So we rented the Holiday the Holiday Motel at the time, and I just imported all my favorite songwriters to come, and the idea was very much what you're talking about, to get the local musicians to collaborate on songs with these people from elsewhere, kind of to seed the swamp. Is that an expression? It is. Forever shall be. Yeah. So actually it got a lot of. It really, I think a lot of the quality of the local writing improved because some of these writers are just mind-blowingly good and inspirational. And now, let's see, I don't want to make it too long, but we did that for quite a few years, like a really long time, and made volumes and volumes and volumes of CDs that were recorded during these events. And now we have all that music. We have all this music that's Door County inspired. That was the rule. If we're going to write songs together, we're going to have all these people come and be inspired by this town, by our bridge primarily. And it kind of went out from there. And so for one thing, I think it gave everybody a kind of a pride of place that they didn't have before, and that was really a consciously thought out result that we wanted to achieve. Like, okay, if I'm going to live in this town for the rest of my life, I want it to be a place that I can really feel good about, not just for the fact that it's beautiful and I can walk to the post office from where I live, and all of that, those great things, but just for the fact that I'm surrounded with creative people. And I didn't really know much about the art, the visual arts scene here. Eventually we started collaborating with the local artists too, the visual arts, and I think that's when things kind of permeated the creative scene, and it wasn't just music, I used to say that, I tried to market this. I tried to become a marketer of sorts, and I would tell people, music is the gateway drug to the fine arts, And people are, oh, okay.
Well said, well said.
So anyway, we're trying to continue what we're doing, but right now it's really pretty much, we're collaborating with other people in other places, and we hope to collaborate with MUSE and all these other places. But right now, our kind of like our home base is the Tambourine Lounge, and Writers' Night on Thursdays is something that I really feel great about. The only problem we have is that it's starting to get too big, and we're gonna what's that?
I'll help you with that.
Okay. See, it'll have to overflow, But it's taken a really long time for that to happen. For a long time, it was the same people, new songs. They motivated to come up with new songs, but the same people pretty much. And for some reason, it exploded a little bit last summer, and I thought the winter would be bleak, but the winter was great, and it's this summer I'm afraid of. It's going to be we're going to have to figure out how to get the law to change the seating capacity limit. I don't know. One thing.
Oh, sorry.
If this is the last chance I get to talk.
No.
Can I, okay, then I won't say what I was going to say.
We're going to talk about songwriting at the end as well, so that'll be good.
Okay.
Still on the theme of the health of the Door County musical community, shifting a little bit to classical music. My new friend Allyson was at a panel last week for the Peninsula Arts Humanities Alliance or something like that. Sorry about that.
We were talking about the arts and economic prosperity
That's
in
right.
Door County. But we had from the panel representatives from Peninsula Arts Community Alliance.
That's right. So classical music,
Yeah.
what a change. I lived here in the 90s when Midsummer's was starting to get a foothold.
Mm-hmm.
It's expanded very much, and now you have a string quartet, and you're on board. Can you tell us a little about that? I'm a horn player, by the way, so if you need French horn players, let me know.
We always do.
Always do.
So just a little background, because I think that I relate to my esteemed colleagues, and this is such a fun panel to be on. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here and be in this space and to be with all of you. My background is I'm a violist, and I never dreamed that was going to be my job, to be a violist. I thought I'd be many other things. But, life takes its own course, and as you're a young person and you like music and you explore it, and here I am now with a doctorate in music performance from University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I thought then from there my career would take me into collegiate teaching, which it did, and I got to work with great students, but I found that my passion was always in the younger students and in music education. And as I've been able to play with Midsummer since 2004, it's been a wonderful experience. Chamber music, by the way, if you don't know, for classical chamber music, it's one musician on a part. So if you have a string quartet, you have a violin one, a violin two, a viola, and a cello. And if you have a piano quintet, you've got those same instrumentations, but then you have a pianist. The idea is that you don't need a conductor. Nobody needs a conductor. So we do these concerts in intimate spaces. There's no conductors in here, are there? Colin. He's an organist. It's okay. He conducts on many different pedals and keys. So we find that chamber music is a great way to relate as musicians, because we communicate in a different way, because without that barrier of the conductor, we do our rehearsals as well, and we rehearse together, and we're great colleagues, and What I was drawn to with Midsummer's music when I first started playing with them is, first of all, Door County. Door County's beautiful, Door County's wonderful people, and Door County supports music. So, yay, yay, and yay. And when I first started coming up here, I thought, I just want to be here as much as possible. And fortunately, over time, I became more in the role of Midsummer's music so that I could spend more time in Door County playing these great chamber music pieces and just enjoying my atmosphere and enjoying the role. So yes, now I'm executive director, and I'd like to talk a little bit about classical music and what it means to, I think, Door County. And Door County is very supportive of classical music. We have many people who live here full time, but then we also have a lot of people who come from Chicago and Milwaukee and Minneapolis, and they tell us that we have some of the best classical music that exists in the Midwest right here in Door County. And it's because of Peninsula Music Festival, it's because of Midsummer's, it's because of Birch Creek, it's because of all these wonderful organizations. What you asked and what I want to attribute to is what are we doing on the non-summer season parts? So we established a residency in 2018, a string quartet residency called the Griffin String Quartet. And it's to serve our community from September through May. A lot of the classical music groups are seasonal, they're festive. You know, that's wonderful, but they're not here for the residents throughout September through May. And what the Griffin String Quartet can do is be a community embedded event. And almost all of our offerings are for free. These are professional musicians, advanced degrees, and they are out there 100 events between September through May each year to demystify classical chamber music. A lot of times people will think about classical music and they'll think it's going away, it's aging out, but it's not. It really isn't. And it takes some of these efforts. And with the Griffin String Quartet, when they go to the kids, whether it's a school event or the Boys and Girls, YMCA, kids are lining up at the instrumental petting zoos so that they can try these instruments. And if you didn't know, I want to point out right now, there are no strings in schools in Door County schools. And one of our objectives is to make this more accessible for kids everywhere we can. And I think classical music is really, it's not that it's aging out, it's just how are we making it part of our conversation in our community. So thank you for the question, and I hope that answered it.
Thank you, Allyson. That was wonderful.
Can I jump in super duper quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to announce that on that front, we're super excited to partner with the Griffin, and they've agreed to be MUSE's resident ensemble, and we're very excited to bring in their students, help them find more students, and one of our primary objectives in the first few years is to hopefully start a youth chamber orchestra. So we're very excited to partner on tackling some of those things that Allyson was just talking about.
That's great. You know, one other thing, Allyson, is I know I was just speaking with Vinnie Chameau, she's here someplace, about I think you had a program along with Friends of Gibraltar and all that, and so you're bringing Midsummer's music right into the schools as well.
Yeah, thanks to Vinnie and thanks to the other programs that are there. We are participating with their choir program, with their kids. We present, and I mean, there's so many opportunities. What has happened is at the beginning of this lesson program idea, we weren't sure how this was going to work, and we're so grateful to our partners. We're up to 70 collaborative partners right now, and thanks to them, we now have over 50 private string students who are, most of them, on full scholarship or partial scholarship so that they can study string instruments. And it's great. And yes, the objective is that we can get them playing together, and that's whether it's in group class or in chamber music. Kids love to share their talents with other peers, and so chamber music is just a natural fit for them.
Sounds good. Thank you. Zephyr.
Hi.
I first met you, I think, with Biff's Out of Time band.
I think that
Or maybe
yeah, I think that was
Bacchus
the first.
Lotus, but you're
Maybe one of those two.
Yeah, you're everywhere these days in the last few years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Zephyr has a great website, and she also has a funny story about her first musical performance. And if you remember what I'm thinking of.
Oh, and my cute little bio that I put in my on my website. Yeah, it's to draw the people in to the website. It's a cool story, I guess. It's one of the stories that my family likes to tease me about, especially my mom. I've always been kind of wily, I guess, and I was born in Northern California. I grew up in Door County, but I was born in Humboldt County. And she started her business the same year I was born, so we did a lot of shows. And we were at a music festival, and she was selling her body polish. And of course, I decided to up and leave. I was about 3 years old, and I left her side and ran away. And by the time she realized I was gone, she was frantically, her and her friends looking for me everywhere. And they didn't find me. They heard me though, and I was up on stage with the band there. I just found my way up, and they gave me a mic. I don't know why, but yeah, it was a reggae band. Apparently, it was pretty cool. There is a cute little picture, and I was just beaming from ear to ear, and I was well on my way to my purpose and lifetime of curiosity towards music, and mostly performing as well. I think, that was just the beginning.
Well, as I looked at it, it looked like you spent a fair amount of time in New York, but at some point you decided to come home. And we talked earlier, you have 50 gigs scheduled for this summer, so clearly you have found that the Door County health of the music is there for you. Can you talk a little bit about why you came back and how that is working out?
Well, to piggyback on the scholarship conversation, I was a Miller Scholarship recipient. I graduated from Gibraltar and was able to go on to higher education in music specifically because of that scholarship. So I studied musical theater, vocal performance as well, and I graduated in New York and lived and worked there for on and off about 7 years. And I say on and off because we all would come back. A lot of people who grew up in Door County would come back and work the summer season and then go back. And that continued on, that pattern, post college, because it's a good way to make a little money and then spend it all as you auditioned through the winter in New York. So I was there for about 7 or 8 years. And then I moved home in 2020 when Manhattan was a little not so fun to be around. And I thought it would be temporary, but then I realized that in the time I had been gone, the music scene here was really flourishing. And I knew it was always there, but I think I just had a new perspective, which is often a story you'll hear from a lot of people who grow up here. It was definitely told to us, you need to leave so you can realize how cool it is and come back. And it's true. It's very true. You just grow up a little bit and you realize like everything you need is right where you're blooming. So bloom where you're planted. Kind of rings true. But so got very involved, and I think a reason why I stayed was probably because of Charlie Eckert. He was our band director at Gibraltar. I wasn't in band, I was a choir and theater kid, but he wrote me into the band often to sing with his jazz band, and that was pretty awesome. So when he heard I was home, we sang in Out of Time a little bit, and then he eventually put me into his band that he started in 1979, Bacchus Lotus, and we've been playing together 3 years now. This is our 3rd season, so it's been a lot of fun, probably too much fun, but yeah.
Thanks, Zephyr.
Yeah, thank you.
Colin, the music supervisor. Conductor, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll explain the music supervisor. It's an official title for a job. I did not give it to myself. I don't supervise the music. Come on, you notes.
I can attest to that in the musical theater world. It is a real job.
It's a Broadway term. Just to briefly explain, I music supervised The Lion King on Broadway and worldwide. There were 13 companies of the show by Disney, and I was in charge of all of them. And the music supervisor is one who hires the cast in conjunction with the director and choreographer, and hires, in particular, the conductors and teaches the show. So that's the job. It's wonderful, but it relates to what I would love to say, at least one of the things, which is with Lion King, actually, I travel to South Africa a lot because the Lion King show involves genuine, authentic Zulu music and Xhosa and, true South African idiom. And so we went to South Africa because each of the companies around the world hires 6 or 7 South African singers. And these are, of course, singers who've never been in a musical before, never acted, never had any training, but they're just in their culture. They sing, and they sing in harmony, which they got from the missionaries 100 years ago, and wonderful performers. And I can't remember the word, but in Zulu, there's one word which means both singing and dancing. The two are inseparable, and that really struck me, and I've always remembered that. I think there's, sub-words which will divide that. But that for me was the first breakout moment from strictly classical music, because I had a career as an opera and ballet conductor. And then I went, hang on a minute, this is music too, and very exciting music, where Elton John's compositions and pop tunes, basically, for the show were combined with this genuine, authentic South African music. And I loved it, and I did it for 7 years. And I thought what I was responding to was a crossover style. And I was all into kind of crossovering, between different styles, jazz and classical, and you name it, the things that we all now do all the time. But really, as time has gone on, and particularly since I came to Door County, I've realized that it's actually more than just a stylistic crossover. It's an attitude towards music, which I think is happening all over different genres, which is that we invite the audience to be much more participants with us. That's what I'm doing up here. I'm trying to break barriers, not so much in the kind of music we play, but in how we play it. So my little, outfit, Colin Friends Concerts, is all about me coming from the garden covered in mud and playing, because I'm a musician and this is how I play, and actually how I play best. And so the performance of it is different and much more casual and much more inviting of the audience to kind of be friends and be part of that. So I think that's what I love about Door County, that we not only collaborate musically, but there's a looseness about the way we do that, and there's a kind of participation of the audience which we invite. And I think it's happening not just here, but it's happening really in classical music too. If you look at the new conductors for Chicago Symphony Orchestra, New York Symphony Orchestra, these are young guys in their 20s or 30s. They're talking to the audiences before the shows. They're doing TikTok videos. They're being real, they're being human and being collaborative and communicative and demystifying, as Allyson said, demystifying both the music but the performance of the music. So that's a kind of tangential connection to what we were talking about. I love the thing about the youth. I think that is one of the things in Door County we really need to double down on, because the youth are the people sitting in these chairs in 20 years' time are in Gibraltar School Choir doing a concert as we speak. We have to encourage them. They're going to be the players of the future, the audience of the future, the promoters of the future. Absolutely crucial. So I'm
better on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be going into the school too, and Vinny's got a busy year ahead of her, sorting us all out. Kids love music. I did a thing with the organ at Ephraim Moravian Church this year with the 3rd graders. They came in. I mean, I didn't give them an organ concert, but the instrument is so wildly dramatic and so physically, bizarre, that it has them engaged from start to finish. It's the quietest instrument on the planet, and it's the loudest instrument on the piano, and the biggest instrument on the planet. What's not to like about that when you're an 8-year-old kid? That's why I started. So I'll leave it there, but yeah, I think passion is the key to all of this. We all have passions, and it's about, Door County encourages that. What is that passion? It might be something on a little niche somewhere. But mine is actually to communicate with the audience and communicate with people, because for 30 years I've had 3,000 people behind me, but I have no clue who they are. Now I know you, and I know you, and I know you.
I have attended your organ performances at the Ephraim Moravian Church, and it is a lot of fun. It isn't my father's classical music anymore. It's a lot more fun. thank you for, I think we've covered the economy, or excuse me, the kind of the health of the musical scene here. Let's talk a little bit about the economics. I think it's tougher to be a musician these
Before we
days.
do that,
Okay,
could I stall that a little bit?
let's stall it. If you need a mic,
That discussion a moment.
can we get you a mic?
I just think you're starting to hit on some.
You're starting to hit on something really important when you're talking about the classical music and that all those forms of music. Like, we have a lot of huge resource of classical music in Door County, like a lot more than most places this size, right? I would imagine. And we have a lot of musicians that aren't what you'd call classical, and you know, when
Some of us that crossover.
yeah, and there is that a little amount of crossover,
Yeah.
which actually should be a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, we should just encourage that with every breath we breathe, almost that crossover and the collaboration part of it. It's like, and you talk about classical music, you know, it's not a language that's dying, you know, and when I think about us being here in this room with all these languages that are struggling to stay alive, I think the way most of the languages has stayed alive is to morph and join with other languages and, you know, make hybrid languages, and those are the strongest, you know, the ones, if you think of the biggest ones, they've got the more languages, you know, squeezed up inside them, you know, they've got the most hybridization, is that the word?
Yeah.
So many seasons as well.
Yeah, so, yeah, and the forms that won't survive are the ones that aren't dynamic, that don't embrace other forms and grow in that way. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of that, and that's what makes it so great, you know, what everybody's doing. But
there's a big education component, a lot of years of study, and I think we've heard from the panel that's an area that really needs to get bolstered. And I know, Jess, you've been involved from a kind of a bird's eye point of view with the Community Foundation's efforts, but maybe more importantly, being on the school board and just seeing that. What are the schools thinking about education and music, to put you on the spot?
So I'm no longer on the school board, but I know from having kids there and having been on the school board, you know, we all take pride, I think all of the districts, not just in Sturgeon Bay, but in having such a creative community where there is such easy access, especially like Pat said, compared to other places this size, you know, to the arts, whether it's music or all of the different arts that are represented in this room right now. I mean, there are kids that were here looking at this artistic installation, creating their own art. I think that, like you said, there's never enough. And it's not just because it's beautiful to listen to and it is fun to dance and make music at the same time, but because it is that sense of belonging. You know, that's where we all feel. We feel the passion because it's what our soul needs to get out, you know, and that's what is so important to kids too. They need to feel that they belong and to be celebrated, and music is an incredible way to do that.
I'd love to get your thought on that, Kaira, because I know that one of the key fundamentals on MUSE is education. You talked about music and venues, but a lot of it's education, right?
Absolutely. That's actually more of our primary focus. I mean, it's twofold for sure, but a lot of what we're hoping to do is within that educational component, it's also to bolster music education in the schools and in the community. And that's not just restricted to the youth at MUSE. We will be servicing every age, every ability, every genre, anything that the community wants to see in MUSE. We will find a way to connect people and give them opportunity to embrace those interests. And we are focusing these music educational opportunities through partnerships, like I said earlier, with the Griffin String Quartet. I already have a roster of about 17 teachers, some really incredible people too, like Bruce Bryony will be coming out of Western Illinois University. He's retiring as the trumpet professor there, and he's going to come teach trumpet at MUSE when he moves here late next year, I believe. So, and I actually think I just found him a trumpet student today, so that's exciting. So there's, and it's not just having the opportunities, and we will also be hoping to instill a scholarship so that the economic aspect doesn't hold any students interested and talented and who want to get that experience. They won't be held back financially, hopefully, provided we can sustain that scholarship goal, which I know can be very difficult, and is amazing that Midsummers is able to do what they're able. Like, almost every student you said that's amazing. That's absolutely phenomenal. Definitely a goal to work towards on our end. But to also give these students incredible experiences with the music, not just from an educational standpoint, but also from the performance standpoint, because the education side of it really blossoms when students know that there's something to work towards, and that there's this incredible level of musicianship that they can attain, and when they see people achieve that and present that to them, that gets them all the more excited, which is why I love what the Griffin is doing so much by going into the schools, performing for these students, as well as teaching them. The two are inseparable in my opinion. I mean, because what are you educating for if not to perform? You know, like, what is music education for if not to perform or enjoy music? You know, so the two are really, really interconnected, and I don't think you can have strength in one area without strength in the other. And we're really excited to address that at MUSE.
Great. You know, Jess, I mean to ask you on your LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, I can't remember anymore. You did a program that helped young students feel more comfortable performing in front of audiences, kind of echoing kind of what you were just talking about, Kaira. Can you talk about that, or did I misunderstand that? I see this blank look in your face.
This might be something I did at one point. And it was very successful. They're all living their best lives. At one point, Vinny did invite me to come in and do some songwriting with Friends of Gibraltar. That was so fun to work with maybe fifth graders and to do some songwriting. I've done a lot of work with youth over time, either with my social work hat or just community organizing, and with music too. And I think, again, that common thread is really just helping kids figure out who they are and who they want to be, and leaning into that so that, we're all helping each other, because when we know who we are, we're more likely to be working with others too. There's some data points about kids who are exposed to the arts. We know that for a fact that kids who are exposed to the arts will have better attendance at school. They have a better attitude when they're at school. They're better with their friends, and they become more productive and have more successful lives. So expose kids to the arts.
Pat, you had mentioned classical music in particular. Allyson, that's your world as well. As far as a core musician, what's your response to classical music being part of that?
Well, I think when I grew up because, I grew up enjoying classical music because it was played for me. So I just understood it, and it was something that I really wanted to be part of. As I've grown older, and I do enjoy pop music, and I have embraced it, I had a concert where I was on stage with Rod Stewart, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, I've played some really cool concerts that I love. What I usually try to say about the difference about classical music versus pop music is it's just classical music has this way of existing long term, where pop music might have more of a short term. That's not all pop music. There's some pop music that will live with us for generations. I think that when people hear music that makes them think, it's the same thing as when you're experiencing art, like in the space we're at right now. We're all thinking about, are we listening? These languages, it's going to stick with us. And I think that's where classical music might have just a little bit of a grab, is that it stays with you long term. Whereas pop music can have that moment of it makes you feel good and we love it. And then we want to move on to the next I love it moment. Whereas classical music might make you feel challenged and stay in that challenge moment longer.
May I challenge that thought?
Yeah, I like that. I was going to do that too.
May I? Are you chomping at the bit?
You do.
Well, I like this jumping off point because I have a little different view, a little different side of the coin. I was listening to Nocturne in F this morning when I was doing work before I had to go to my other work obligation before I came here. I love classical music. I think there's a time and a place for all of it. One point before I get to my point, what you were saying about all the different languages and classical music being a different language than maybe rock music or pop music, I think they're all of the same language. They just have a little bit different dialect. And I think they all speak to each other. At least that's what it is for me, in my perspective.
Classical music was influenced by the dance music of its time and the folk music of its time.
Absolutely. But I disagree that I think there is probably music of the classical era that we don't listen to anymore because it wasn't something that stuck with us. And I think there is classical music that withstood the test of time. And I would say that pop music, there is a space for that to withstand the test of time and also be a classic. And I think it's a harder space to find that. However, I think pop music, for me personally, again, it's just my perspective, goes beyond just a little 3-minute and 30-second song. For me, it's the whole performance arts piece. It's the visual aspect. It's taking into account what's happening in the world right now, what's happening for that artist in that tiny piece of the world, in the bigger space of the world, and how we find our way through and how we find connection with others through that as well. So there's a bigger aspect to pop music that I feel really draws me towards it, that I think when I was younger, I kind of kept in a box, and I sort of thought, well, like you're saying, pop music, it's silly, and it's just for fun, and it's just candy. Well, no, these are my thoughts. These are my thoughts that I had. I put it in that box, and I thought it was silly, but as I've grown, I've had a deeper appreciation for my love for pop music in the same way that I had a deep appreciation for classical music. So
I want to be clear.
I hope I'm not being too harsh.
Where this came from. So I used to teach music appreciation classes in college, and I love these classes because they would sometimes be seminars of 100 people at a time. Maybe they were taking art appreciation or theater appreciation or music appreciation, and I was always so honored that they would choose music appreciation. And I would often ask them, so who of you, and we could do the same question here, how many of you participated in music while you were in the public school system or as a young person? Wow. How many of you still play today? What changed? What's different? Why does that become a thing? What we do is we teach music out. We make it into a competition, or we make it into a grade, or we make it into an ensemble that doesn't stand with you. And so when I would work with these kids in music appreciation, college students, we would talk about what's the difference between music that lasts and music that's temporary. And it's not that pop music isn't great. It's not silly at all. I love it. I rock out all the time. I am a shower singer. My kids are with me and they hear me and they say, "Mom, stop." My point is, though, when I would be in music appreciation as a teacher, and I would ask the students, what's the most popular song today? Again, I'd ask for their hands to be raised, and most of them would agree on the most popular song today. And then I would say, let's take it back a decade. And then they're thinking, and it's a little more challenging, but they start agreeing again. And then I ask them to take it back another decade, another decade, another decade. And as we go further and further back, it becomes more of a difficult situation to pinpoint what was happening in the culture of popular music. But when I ask them, do they know who Beethoven is, who's Mozart, who's Bach, who's Brahms, who's Dvorak, they all raise their hands and they've all heard this music. And so I'm just saying that there's something special about that music that impacts those kids, that they will latch onto it for their lifetime. And for those of you who aren't playing today, we need people who love music in the audience, and there's something to that too. So you don't have to be playing your instrument or singing your instrument, but if you love music, you're welcome in any of our circles.
I definitely agree with you that the classical music is definitely something that kids can get around, but I think that's just because also it's in the curriculum. There's really not a part of the curriculum that looks into pop music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and today.
Can I mention something? And this is the last thing I'll say because it's probably the most important thing I'll say all night.
Excellent.
And what I keep hearing like pop music as a separate thing, but you mentioned earlier, but they're all the same language, you know? What's happening is they're not teaching classical music kids to write music. They're teaching them how to play from a piece of paper, and I've talked to a lot of people, like they play this and that, they've got a degree in music, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to hear some of your music, and it's like, oh, I don't really write music. I know some classical musicians do compose, but as far as composition, I think that's where you get into a whole nother place. And composition these days, it's so easy to collaborate with people. You know, there's so many people. These people writing music, Beethoven, all these guys, they were probably doing it in their own little bubble, you know? There just wasn't that many people who owned a piano, for example, back then, right? Way back then. Maybe I'm wrong. How many people owned pianos versus printing presses back then? I don't know. We could get off the track. But
Yeah, though, I think what we're getting at is that they're both equally important. I mean, I'm just like in so much deep agreement with you both that they're both super valid and a part and should be a part of the curriculum. Not one more than the other, but I think all encompassing because they are of the same language.
You know, some of it is it's just influences, right?
Influence.
Yeah, I want to shift the conversation a little bit more towards the songwriting element. And I know a lot of pop and other music is based on music that the composer has learned and developed over years, including classical music. What drives this group in terms of their songwriting? And you have a microphone. Do you want to start with that?
Well, it's just, I think that we should stay on just kind of come out of this with the thought that, you know, how to tie it in with what we're seeing here, and that's all these languages, and a lot of them are going to die. And the ones that are going to live are the ones that kind of were able to collaborate and assimilate into a newer context, you know? And I think that music will stay in the schools if it's more fun for the kids, and and it's not less, you don't have the conflict between pop music or classical, or somehow people find a way to make these new magical combinations happen, because a kid will, learn, classical musician kid learns to compose a little bit, and he accidentally finds himself writing a pop song. Well, that's no shame, Vice versa, pop.
Just branch off of that. I know I'm talking a lot, I'm sorry, but I actually think some of my favorite pop music right now and always is kind of I guess you could call it like Baroque style pop, which involves a lot of string, orchestral, classical themes with synth and fun pop vocals and a cool dance drum beat that just combines the two in such a crazy, fabulous way. It's like what we just saw at the Met Gala with, just pop music and Disney music all over the Met. Just the marriage of two really contrasting colors, these being different sides of music, I think can offer something really cool and something really approachable and fun that attracts me to it. Okay.
Yeah. Kathy?
I love this conversation. I think that really comes down to economics. When you talk about who had a piano.
Nice segue.
Who had a piano? I mean, we're talking about, there was a system back there where there were patrons that were actually paying the musicians to create, to compose. And we're in a culture right now where, fast forward, we're not getting paid for our creations. We're on TikTok and Spotify, and we're on all these platforms. We're being told that if we're in this, we're going to win it, and fear of missing out, and it's the economics that are driving it. And yet, at the end of the day, as a popular songwriter, we're not really making any money in it anymore. And so we go to that place of, well, because we love it, because we have the passion. And that's wonderful. And I think that one of the most important things just is humans, that we shouldn't be commercializing the thing that we all have innately in us. We might not have pitch, but we have the innate ability to emote and to feel through the vibration that comes to us through nature, through whatever. But I think when we start talking about the economics, why are school sports getting all the money and all the arts programs are being cut? So, I mean, there's so many things that we could go on and on and on about. I think the most important thing is that there is something here in Door County that has brought us. I mean, look at all this. There's quite a few that are born and raised here too. Came here from have been here for decades, or in situations like Colin and myself. We're the new ones here, and I would have never imagined that I would have found you here. I really can't believe it. So, but there's the economics of that. So, but there's this beautiful thing that we have here, that we're all somehow part of that, and let's hold on to that, because I think we could be a model for other people to kind of figure out. How do we have 350 nonprofits on this, or something crazy like that?
I hear we have more nonprofits per capita in Door County than any other county in the state of Wisconsin. Makes it hard to raise money.
Yeah, 18 cents, we're not getting economics.
That's right.
They need to make the registration process harder.
No, they don't. We just got ours last week. No problem. It was great.
Okay, good.
Now we can restrict people. That's fine.
Did you have a comment?
I would like to comment, actually. I kind of want to combine the last two little topics we talked about. And I want to preface it by commenting on how music and the arts, they have, if you don't take the time to focus on collaboration and all of the different parts around music that make it work for someone economically, all of the arts can tend to occur in like silos, where they get isolated, and when you make a sound, it bounces off the wall and comes back to you. And it's not until you open the door of the silo and invite your friends in when you can start to find that economic prosperity portion of it. Like art and music are beautiful and true and everything in their own form on their own, but they only start to become movements when you have collaboration cross genres, and when neighbors get together and start making music, and when there's this huge issue in the collegiate music scene where millions of people every year are getting degrees in music, and then they don't know what to do with it aside from auditions after that. And the audition scene is not where the majority of the economic prosperity occurs. Symphonies are wonderful and Broadway is wonderful, but they're only employing a small percentage of the talented, educated musicians in the world. It's not just our country, but it's the world. And I think what my generation is starting to realize, especially with the advent of the internet and being born and raised in times of economic turmoil, like my most influential years were during the housing, market crash, and my dad was a contractor, so we felt that pain. And what it comes down to is, do you have the grit to do what it takes to find those economic opportunities? And what that comes down to is, are we properly educating people not only on how to make the music, but then how to transmit the music? And a lot of times that comes down to the skills of freelancing. And that's usually, that's how I got where I am right now. I 100% freelanced my way to executive director at MUSE. And even then, this is still kind of a thing I'm building and taking all of my skills that I've culminated from not only music, but outside of music. I was just telling my friend the other day, he was interviewing me for this theater piece that he's doing. And I told him, I'm like, at my economic status within school, I came from an okay family, we were stable and everything, but I also had to finish my master's degree, I had to clean about 10,000 toilets. That's pretty much what my master's degree took. Now I started my own cleaning business, but what my cleaning business taught me was how to market, how to network, how to work with clients one-on-one, how to create a product that people actually want to pay for. How, there's so many different elements behind musicianship and the economic part of it that is completely separated out in the education system. And schools are starting to realize this, because they're sending out these amazing musicians into the world, but that's all they have a lot of the time. They don't know what it's like to balance their budget for their studio, or what it takes to go into the schools and recruit a studio of 30 to 50 students in order to pay your bills, things like that. It gets lost in the fray of your 10,000 hours of practice in the practice room, and your music theory exercises, and your 17 ensembles you have to be in, and your internships and all that stuff. And a lot of schools are starting to address this, and I think that's where we're going to find a lot of the economic growth for musicians in this area, is when we start, treating it more like a business too, because it is.
Thanks, Kaira. I noticed that we are getting a little tight on time here, Rebecca, and we haven't, let's put it another way, this audience is listening pretty carefully. But are there some questions out of the audience? That you've got some fun musicians, performers here on stage. Does anyone have a question you'd like to, now you got to find a microphone. And where's the mic? Here we go.
So I'm just curious, Zephyr and I have talked a little bit about this. You're practicing. You're getting your songs and your music ready for your performance. I'm just kind of curious, when you're up there on stage, do you feel as if it's kind of an out-of-body experience? Do you ever get a feeling where it's just, you're not thinking at all, it's just your muse, you're just up there doing it? I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that kind of thing.
Cathy, would you like that tackle? Colin?
I'll give this a go. I think it's going to be different for all of us. We all play very different styles, very different instruments as well. Right now I'm playing, as an organist, I'm playing an instrument which doesn't take any feeling in the hands whatsoever. An elephant can play the organ and it'll come out the same volume as if I tiptoed. So it's not about that, which some pianists and violinists would need to produce a tone. It's a very technical instrument, it's a very physical instrument, so I've got one foot firmly in the technique, and what the hell's the next note, and how do I shift my butt to balance to get that pedal? It's very technical and physical, and 40% of it's on the music, and maybe 10% is on the audience. Do they like me? Do they like me? What funny line am I going to say right after this piece? So I do think it probably changes. Like somebody, I don't know, any skill which takes a lot of brain power, you've got one part of your brain on the technical and the other part of the brain on the artistic. So that's for me. Conducting, though, an orchestra can play without a conductor. To a large extent, you might get in the middle of a rapturous bit of Brahms and you actually are just gliding. It looks fabulous, but in fact, the orchestra's doing the work and you are just allowing them to play. So then I surrender the technique. I just don't get lost because I might be needed in a moment. So I think it varies.
Sounds like a runner's high in a way.
Yeah.
For me, it depends how prepared I am. If I just got the music like a week and a half before, I'm usually like, oh crap, But if I've had it for a while and I really connect with the music and I feel really prepared, and sometimes you get to a point where you don't mean to memorize it, but you do in the classical world, obviously in the popular genres that's expected, but as a classical flautist, I'm reading pages and pages of music, and sometimes you don't realize how much you have memorized until you get up there and you lose yourself, and then you're like, oh my God, where am I on this page? Oh yeah, I'm right here.
Just to add to that, I think when you see a classical musician, take a pianist who's doing a concerto, and they're doing it from memory, of course, because that's the tradition that's built up. I don't know why, but it doesn't mean they're better musicians. It means they can memorize. What it means is they practiced it over and over and over again, just insanely. And then they know it so well, yes, their body will surrender and kind of do the right things, and maybe they have space for their brain to go elsewhere. But I never, ever get to that point. I'm a sight reader, not a memorizer.
So I think for me, it is sort of like a flow state, where you've practiced a lot, or hopefully you've practiced a lot and you feel prepared. But as you may have seen from my other answers, like for me, it is all about the connection with other people too. So the people in the audience, finding somebody that is, this music is resonating with. But also, I so admire how you talk about having grit as a professional musician. Like everyone up here, I do not have that. Any success I've had, I feel like is because I am so focused on playing with somebody that I really love and enjoy connecting with, and together, maybe they do all the work and I just get to play music with them. And, so it's, for me, it's more of the connection with either who I'm up on stage with, playing with, or practicing with, or whoever's in the audience. And not so much my technical abilities.
Anyone else?
I do find the experience of performance to be quite cathartic, and as long as I'm prepared, I thought that was exactly what ran through my head. And it when you don't have enough preparation, then you're awake and you're thinking about everything and you're very in your head. But if you have the time to prepare, you can. It's almost a gift to yourself, because you can get into a almost out of body experience, especially since I think singing is so full body. I know I'm on the right track when I feel it from my toes to the tips of the ends of my hair, and you kind of leave the moment a little bit. It's very vulnerable, but it's so exciting when you can give that kind of a performance to your audience, and I think it's worth it, and I think it's the coolest thing I get to call a job. So yeah.
Sorry if I'm butting in again. Allyson can speak to this. With chamber music, I think is the most exciting thing. I love accompanying, and that's one of the things I do as an orchestra conductor. I've always loved to accompany opera ballet. It's not the main event, it's the accompaniment. And as a chamber musician, the 80% of the job is listening. You're listening. acutely and reacting in split-second timing. That's so fun. You're very much alive at that point.
You would make a good troublemaker. We have to listen off of each other all the time. Any other questions? We have time for just one more, I'm afraid. Can you grab a mic?
I only have maybe two more.
Dorothy, you've got to grab the microphone.
Only if I can make an observation and then Terry can ask the question.
Okay.
Approved.
Oh, sweet. I'm not a historian. It's just, when you were talking about merging classical music with pop music or any other genre per se, it made me think of Nina Simone, because Nina Simone was a classically trained pianist, and she wanted to play classical piano, but in the second school, I forget which school, not Juilliard, but anyways, she didn't get into because she was black and she didn't have the money and they didn't want her in it, but here she was wanting to play classical music. So somehow she realized, if I sing these standard songs like Porgy, I Love You Porgy, or whatever the song of the day was, and she would then put her classical twist on those songs. And that's how she felt complete as an artist. And secondly, she didn't even want to sing. So there you go. And that's my question. Observation.
Allyson, you've been whispering in my ear as she was talking. You have a quick response before Terry.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
So I don't actually have a question, but with this being an economic development process, and I kind of wanted to address some things that Cathy brought up. It seems to me it's so beautiful to hear about all of you as individuals and as artists. And I think how many of you are up here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 or 9 musicians. We have 125 musicians in Door County that I know of. So you're representing a great different group, which I think is great.
Like 10%.
10%.
Like the number of birds that represent.
Yeah, very well said. Most of the audience here, I'm guessing, are here because they probably know one of you. Possibly. I'm here to offer something. As the director of the Peg Egan, every Sunday we get 2,000 people, audience members. Being a musician and performing, you need an audience. I think that's incredibly important. I think it's also important to collaborate and to let an audience of 2,000 every Sunday know what's going on in Door County. So I'm offering to you a collaboration that there's an opportunity to come up on that stage, and I don't know how we can work that out, but to let that audience that changes, so that's 23,000 people throughout the summer, that you can reach out to and say, I'm the director of the MUSE, this is what we do. I'm Zephyr, I'm in a band of da-da. I think there's a way to do this, and I think it's really important to do this. And I think there's opportunities out there, so I'm here just to offer an opportunity.
Thanks, Terry. Anybody like to make a comment?
That's wonderful. I think that's the whole thing about the collaboration and community. I moved here because of collaboration with the Steel Bridge, and I love what you're doing continuously on the Thursday nights, the writer's night, and I do think that it should expand into the MUSE and other places that are throughout the county. I want to just add into Mike's question about how you feel as an artist, and I think the most important thing that drives me every single day is that when I get on stage, I become it's effortless, but it's all in preparation. Everything's preparation. I meticulously make notes, I put together set lists, and yet the beauty is when you're in that moment and you go, that next song's not going to work, and to be able to pivot and have the band or just myself be able to know we're going to shift into this and know that no one's going to question that, because we all feel that, and we feel it from the audience and we feel it from other places. It's just being part of that. It's all I've ever known in it, and I think I feel very honored that I've had a life where I've been able to do that. And finding that here in Door County, I just want to see it grow more and more, especially with the children. I think the school systems are really important that we continue to do that and get funding however we can to make sure the kids get strings.
Would I be pressing my luck if I just tried to summarize, explain what I made a joke about there being too many nonprofits earlier. I think that was heard. I think I said the application process should be more difficult. I think I said. I was joking. What I really think we have here is like it's the same thing going on with music. And with the economy, it's a similar thing. We have a lot of musicians, a very high percentage for the population we have, right? I mean, it's pretty, and we have a very high percentage of nonprofits. So we have long ago realized, without even knowing it, that we kind of have a different. We created a different economy here. It's so many nonprofits. It's almost like we have a different economic form of interaction and give and take. Now, so yeah, exactly. And the idea that musicians should collaborate. We need more collaboration between the nonprofits and realize that we're all part of an economical system that's based on something that I kind of feel is better than just the basic capitalism. It's a little more elevated, like the birds in this room. I keep seeing these birds, and I want to be inspired by them, and so I just think, just like the musicians should collaborate, I really think the nonprofits should explore different ways in which we can conglomerate into other forms of nonprofit, of non-profitability. Since we already have that, we might as well develop it into something even greater. All right.
No, I think that's a really great point. And ironically, Allyson and I are already kind of working on that front. Is this a good time to introduce the consortium, or I don't know? It's kind of well, we're working together to build a music education consortium, and so far it's Midsummers and Griffin, MUSE, Birch Creek, DCA. And we're reaching out to all of the local teachers right now, and we're looking to kind of like pool our resources and knowledge and ideas to do exactly what you're describing. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add. You want to say?
I don't know what.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
That's great. Kathy and I were joking that probably every panelist up here is on a nonprofit board, so we're all going to hit you up for donations now. No, thank you so much for listening. This has been a fun experience for me. Please give a round of applause for our panelists. And stick around. I'm sure the conversation can easily continue. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say and to thank Mike as well for leading and guiding the conversation. And for all of you for attending and listening this evening. Thank you. I hope you'll return for some of the other events.